The number one rifle on this list sold for more than $1 million at a public auction, and the man who once owned it had no idea what he was holding until the day it left his hands. Do you have a rifle leaning in a closet corner or wrapped in an old blanket inside a gun safe and have absolutely no clue what it is worth? Stick around until the very end, because the rifle at number one isn't just expensive. It is one of the most significant single objects in the entire history of American firearms. Let's get into it. At number 10, the Springfield Model 1903. This was the rifle that dragged the United States military into the modern era of bolt-action design. Adopted in 1903, it carried American soldiers through two world wars and into the opening years of the Korean conflict. This is the rifle Sergeant Alvin York was carrying in the Argonne Forest in 1918, the day he took on a German machine gun position essentially by himself and walked away having captured well over 100 enemy soldiers. That single battlefield moment turned an ordinary infantry rifle into a piece of American legend. What makes the 1903 special to collectors isn't just the history attached to it, it's the construction. Walnut stocks, hand-fitted internals, and serial numbers that act almost like a birth certificate, telling you the exact factory and the exact era the rifle came out of. Find one with a World War I production date and matching numbers throughout, and you are not holding a rifle anymore. You're holding a direct artifact from the trenches of France. Back in the 1950s, the government was practically giving these away through the old Director of Civilian Marksmanship program, the organization that eventually became today's CMP. $20 to $50 bought you a genuine 1903 fresh out of military surplus. Today, a basic shooter-grade example brings $800 to $1,200. A documented World War I rifle with correct matching parts climbs into the $2,500 to $5,000 range. And the sniper variant, the 1903 A4 with an original Weaver scope still attached, can clear $10,000 without much trouble. If your grandfather brought one of these home from overseas and it has been resting in a closet for the better part of a century, leave the metal alone. Do not scrub it. Do not refinish the wood. That dull, aged patina is not a flaw. It is the entire reason the rifle is worth what it's worth. Moving on to 9 on our list, the Colt AR-15 SP1. People hear AR-15 today and immediately think about politics, but this rifle predates all of that noise by decades. Colt started building the SP1 back in 1963, long before the term assault rifle ever entered the public vocabulary. It was simply the civilian semi-automatic cousin of the military M16, a lightweight, accurate rifle that Colt sold alongside its government contracts. Everything changed in 1994 when the federal government passed the assault weapons ban, restricting features like bayonet lugs, flash hiders, and collapsible stocks on anything made going forward. The instant that law took effect, every SP1 built before it became frozen in time, a configuration that simply cannot be legally reproduced today. Collectors chased the earliest examples hardest, specifically the slab-sided lower receivers Colt produced before they added a raised guard around the magazine release. These early rifles are vanishing from the open market because the people who understand what they have are buying them and locking them away for good. A brand new SP1 cost roughly $200 back in 1971. Today, a clean pre-ban example in its original configuration brings $2,000 to $3,500, and a pristine, new-in-box specimen with the original manual and paperwork can reach $4,000 to $6,000. That works out to somewhere between 15 and 30 times the original price over 50 years. If you have one sitting in your collection, resist the urge to modify it or refinish it, and never let it go for cheap just because it looks like an ordinary black rifle to someone who doesn't know any better. At 8, we have the M1 Garand. General George Patton once called it the greatest battle implement ever devised, and history has more or less proven him correct. This was America's standard issue rifle from the late 1930s all the way through the early 1960s. The gun that won World War II and then went right back to work in Korea. Every soldier who hit the beaches at Normandy, who fought through the hedgerows, who pushed island by island across the Pacific, had this rifle in his hands. 4 companies built the Garand under contract: Springfield Armory, Winchester, Harrington and Richardson, and International Harvester. Springfield produced the highest volume, which makes their rifles the most common. Winchester examples are noticeably scarcer and command a premium. International Harvester rifles are the rarest of the bunch and the ones serious collectors specifically hunt for. Back in the 60s and 70s, the government's old civilian marksmanship program sold surplus Garands for $50 to $100 apiece. Those same rifles today are worth anywhere from 20 to 100 times that. The CMP still sells genuine GI Garands, with service-grade examples running about $1,000 to $1,200, while documented collector-grade Winchester rifles bring $3,000 to $8,000 on the secondary market. At the extreme end, a rare chrome-plated Winchester presentation Garand sold for over $21,000 in late 2025. And the single most valuable Garand ever sold, the 1 millionth rifle off the line, presented directly to John Garand himself when he retired from the Springfield Armory, brought close to $290,000 at auction in 2018. The CMP's surplus inventory is finite and shrinking every year. Once it's gone, there is no refilling that pipeline. If you own an original Garand, never swap out the parts, never touch the stock finish, and hold on to every scrap of paperwork that came with it. Drop a comment right now and tell me how many of these first three you already own. 1, 2, 3, or 0. I genuinely want to know who in this audience is sitting on history and knows it, or perhaps even without realizing it. Now keep watching, because the next 7 rifles climb a lot higher, and one of them is the single most valuable rifle ever sold at public auction in this country. Number 7. The pre-1964 Winchester Model 94. If there's one rifle that defines the American frontier in the public imagination, it's this one. Designed by John Moses Browning and introduced in 1894, more than 7 million have rolled off the line since, making it the gun on every cowboy movie poster and the deer rifle hanging in hunting cabins from the Appalachians to the Rockies. So why does the cutoff date matter so much? In 1964, Winchester made a cost-cutting decision that the collector community has never forgiven. Machined steel parts were swapped for stamped sheet metal. The finishing process was simplified, and cheaper wood replaced the better stock blanks. The rifle still functioned fine, but something intangible was lost, and that single year became the permanent dividing line in Winchester collecting. A standard Model 94 in the 1950s cost somewhere around $60 to $80 new. Today, an honest pre-64 example in solid condition brings $700 to $1,500, with deluxe checkered variants going considerably higher. And the ceiling on this rifle is enormous. In December of 2025, a Model 94 engraved by the legendary Colt and Winchester engraver John Ulrich sold at Rock Island Auction Company for $558,125, a new world record for the model that more than doubled what the same rifle brought just 12 years earlier. If you've got a pre-64 94 with its original blue finish, original walnut, and no aftermarket parts anywhere on it, you are not holding a deer rifle. You're holding an appreciating asset. At number 6, the Sharps Model 1874. This is the rifle that quietly powered the entire era of the American West, even though most people today barely recognize the name. Buffalo hunters, frontier scouts, Army sharpshooters, and Texas Rangers all relied on it. Tom Selleck made it famous on screen in Quigley Down Under, but the real history is even more remarkable. Billy Dixon used a Sharps to make a legendary shot at roughly 1,500 yards during the Battle of Adobe Walls in 1874, a distance that still amazes long-range shooters today. The legendary lawman and gambler Bat Masterson owned one as a personal sidearm of choice. These rifles fired enormous cartridges, the 45-70, the 45-110, the 50-90, and the famous 51-40, rounds capable of dropping a buffalo at 800 yards. The buffalo hunting era itself is a dark and complicated chapter of American history, but it placed this rifle squarely at the center of the national story. A custom Sharps in the 1870s cost a working hunter $30 to $50, a serious financial commitment at the time. Today, a clean original Model 1874 starts around $10,000 and climbs from there depending on caliber and configuration, with documented military-marked examples bringing substantially more. Bat Masterson's Personal Sharps Buffalo rifle sold at Rock Island Auction in December of 2025 for $230,000, setting a new record for the model. If your family has a Sharps anywhere in its history, a letter, an old photograph, a story tying it to a specific person or place, get that rifle appraised before you do anything else with it. Halfway through our list. Next up we have number 5, the pre-1964 Winchester Model 70. If the Model 94 is the cowboy's rifle, the Model 70 earned the nickname the Rifleman's Rifle, and that title was never marketing. It was earned in the field. From its 1936 introduction right up until that same fateful 1964 cutoff, the Model 70 was widely considered the finest bolt-action sporting rifle American industry had ever mass-produced. The same cost-cutting wave that hit the Model 94 hit the Model 70 just as hard. Winchester moved to press checkered stocks, cheaper steel, and a redesigned action that serious shooters never warmed up to. The most desirable pre-64 variants are the super-grade rifles and the African chamberings, calibers like the 375H and H Magnum and the 458 Winchester Magnum, along with oddball chamberings like the 220 Swift and the original 22 Hornet. A standard pre-64 Model 70 cost around $130 in the 1950s. Today, an honest standard-grade example brings $1,500 to $3,000. Super-grade rifles bring $5,000 to $7,000, and the rare African Magnum chamberings in excellent condition can push past $10,000. Watch closely for fakes here, because the pre-64 reputation is strong enough that sellers occasionally try to pass off later actions dressed up to look original. Always check the serial number and receiver markings carefully before you buy or sell. At 4, the original Henry rifle from 1860. Designed by Benjamin Tyler Henry, this is the gun that fundamentally changed the nature of warfare. It was the first practical lever-action repeater the world had ever seen, holding 16 rounds at a time when most soldiers were still working single-shot muzzle loaders. Confederate troops facing Union soldiers armed with these during the Civil War gave it a nickname that has survived more than a century and a half. That damned Yankee rifle you could load on Sunday and shoot all week long. New Haven Arms Company built only about 14,000 of these between 1860 and 1866, and the number that survived today in honest, original, shootable condition is a fraction of that, shrinking every single year to loss, damage, and well-meaning but value-destroying refinishing work. A Civil War soldier paid roughly $40 out of his own pocket for one, essentially a full month's pay, because he understood it might be the thing that kept him alive. Today, an honest shooter-grade original sells for $30,000 to $80,000, and examples with engraving or documented Civil War provenance go well beyond that. In May of 2025, a factory-engraved, silver-plated New Haven Arms Henry sold at Rock Island Auction Company for $411,250, the second highest price that auction house has ever recorded for the model. If you ever come across an original Henry anywhere, get a professional appraisal immediately. Do not clean it, do not oil the brass receiver, and do not touch the patina. That aged surface is the entire value. Now at number 3, the Winchester Model 1886. This is where the list stops playing around. Another John Browning design, and one that a lot of firearms historians consider the finest lever action ever built. Unlike its lighter predecessors, the 1886 was engineered to handle serious big-game cartridges, chambering rounds like the 4570 Government and the 4590. Theodore Roosevelt himself favored the 1886 on his hunting expeditions, and when a man who hunted dangerous game across multiple continents picks a rifle, that endorsement carries weight. The most valuable examples combine deluxe wood, factory engraving, and rare chamberings, and when all three line up on a single original rifle, you're looking at the top of the entire collector market. A standard 1886 cost roughly $20 to $30 in the late 1800s. Today, an honest standard rifle brings $3,000 to $8,000, Deluxe engraved variants run 15,000 and up, and the absolute peak examples are staggering. A gold inlaid Model 1886 sold at auction for $1,165,000. We'll come back to this rifle's most famous example in just a moment, because it's saving the top spot on this list for a reason. Number 2, the Winchester Model 1873, specifically the legendary 1 of 1,000 variant. The standard 1873 is already famous as the gun that won the West, the most recognized Winchester ever produced. But in 1875, the company did something no other manufacturer had attempted. They began test-firing rifles in batches of 1,000, and the single most accurate rifle out of each batch received special deluxe finishing and was stamped directly on the barrel with the words 1 of 1,000. It was, in effect, the world's first factory-certified premium-grade firearm. Only 136 rifles ever earned that stamp, and today only about 40 are confirmed to still exist. The rest have been lost to time, destroyed, or locked away in private collections that may never resurface. A 1 of 1,000 cost roughly $100 back in the 1870s, a genuine fortune when the average laborer was earning about $1 a day. Documented originals today sell in the range of $500,000 to $900,000. One specific example, the very last 1 of 1,000 rifle Winchester ever shipped, sold at Rock Island Auction Company in September of 2018 for $805,000, more than double its pre-sale high estimate. There's an even rarer cousin worth knowing about too, the Model 18761 of 100, of which only 54 were ever made and only 10 are confirmed to survive. One of those sold for $891,250 in that same 2018 sale. If you ever see 1 of 1,000 or 1 of 100 stamped on a Winchester barrel, stop everything, do not negotiate, and get a Cody Firearms Museum letter along with a professional appraisal immediately. You're looking at 6 or 7 figures. And now the rifle that earns the top spot on this entire list, the single most valuable rifle ever sold at public auction in American history, and the reason it belongs at number 1 rather than back where we mentioned its model earlier. The Winchester Model 1886 Express Rifle, serial number 1. This isn't just about rarity or fine engraving. This is the rifle that combines every layer of value a collector could ever ask for in one single object. The story starts in 1886, the year Winchester unveiled the most powerful lever-action rifle the world had seen up to that point. The very first one off the production line, serial number 001, was pulled aside, engraved, customized, and finished to an extraordinary standard before being presented as a gift. The man who gave it was Lieutenant George E. Albee, a Medal of Honor recipient and a close friend of the Browning family. The man who received it was Captain Henry W. Lawton, also a Medal of Honor recipient, an Army officer who, just months after receiving this rifle, would go on to lead the campaign that finally captured the Apache leader Geronimo. 2 Medal of Honor recipients connected through a single rifle, the very first example of its model, in original condition, with factory engraving, and an accompanying engraved pocket watch that came as part of the original presentation. No other rifle in American history carries that exact combination of firsts and provenance. When this rifle finally came up for sale at Rock Island Auction Company, it brought $1,178,750, setting the world record at the time for the most expensive rifle ever sold at public auction. This is the perfect illustration of why some firearms simply leave the category of gun entirely. Once you combine being the first of its model, original unaltered condition, and documented provenance tied to verified historical figures, you're no longer looking at something a price tag can really capture. You're looking at a museum piece. If you ever come across a family firearm with a serial number under 100, especially something stamped Winchester, Colt, Sharps, or Henry, do not touch it, do not clean it, do not even handle it more than necessary until a major auction house or certified appraiser has looked at it. So let's bring it all together. 10 rifles that are quietly becoming worth a fortune, and every single one of them belongs in the never sell category. If you own any rifle on this list, or anything close to it, there are 4 rules every serious collector lives by, and ignoring them is how families lose tens of thousands of dollars without ever realizing it. Rule 1, never refinish anything. Not the wood, not the metal. That worn, honest patina, built up over decades, is the single biggest driver of collector value. And a fresh coat of bluing or a sanded stock can wipe out anywhere from half to most of a rifle's worth in a single afternoon. Rule 2, keep every piece of paperwork. Original boxes, manuals, factory tags, receipts, even an old hunting license tied to the gun. Documentation like that can genuinely double a rifle's appraised value. Rule 3, get a factory letter whenever one is available. For Winchesters, the Cody Firearms Museum out in Wyoming can verify the original configuration, ship date, and destination of a specific rifle, and that single piece of paper can add thousands of dollars on its own. And Rule 4, never modify. A new scope mount, a swapped part, an aftermarket stock, every one of those choices chips away at collector value permanently. If this video opened your eyes to what might be sitting in your own safe, do me 3 favors. Hit that like button so YouTube puts this information in front of more collectors who genuinely need to see it. Subscribe because every single week I'm digging into the rifles, handguns, and historical firearms that are quietly making patient collectors rich. And drop a comment with the oldest rifle anywhere in your family's history. You never know, your story might end up featured in a future video. Next week, I'm covering 5 rare handguns that are appreciating even faster than anything on this rifle list. So if there's a revolver or pistol anywhere in your family, you do not want to miss that one. Stay smart, stay patient, and remember the golden rule of this entire hobby. The best investment you'll ever make in the gun world isn't the next purchase. It's the one you already own and never sell.